It's the middle of the night in the city that never sleeps, and that is a theory that we're very much testing here at the moment. John Balfe of TheMacLife.com, post-fight at UFC 217, standing here alongside Mike Bohn of USA Today and RollingStone.com after what is universally being regarded as one of the best UFC cards in recent memory. I'm sure that's a theory you very much agree with.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I'm still riding the wave of emotion, just everything we saw. A historic night. I mean, we've never seen three championship belts change hands. That is what happened here tonight, and I mean, we'll get into it, but that was just something I'll never forget. Probably one of the better nights of my professional life covering this event.
Excellent. Well, let's break it down from the top. George St Pierre versus Michael Bisping. A new champion has been crowned. Now, this is a fight that has been talked about for months, almost practically a year at this point. And there was interest, and then the interest seemed to drop. And then Dana White said the fight's not going to happen. Then he put the fight on again. Yep. Ultimately, I think fans, media alike are glad that it happened because we witnessed one hell of a fight there. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this was just an amazing moment. George St Pierre comes back from a 4-year layoff and looks like he hasn't missed a beat. He comes out, wins the first round. You know, he's throwing his old school Superman punches. He's just looking like he hadn't had a single day off. He looks refreshed, recharged, comes out there. And I mean, you know, there were some moments. I think Michael Bisping won that second round. GSP won the first. And then, of course, he finishes and chokes Michael Bisping out cold in the third round. Just such an impressive performance. And right now, the fourth fighter in UFC history to win titles in 2 weight classes. He came back, accomplished what he wanted to, and he did it in absolutely thrilling fashion.
There was quite a big narrative amongst media and generally fans of the sport as well that George St Pierre was perhaps biting off a little more than he could chew, moving up a weight class after nearly a 4-year-long hiatus. But do you think that elite level fighters such as GSP, such as Dominic Cruz, ring rust doesn't necessarily apply to them?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. We're seeing these theories, and personally for me, I have the theory that if it's a year or so long layoff for a fighter or more, I usually try not to pick them because I just think ring rust is a real thing, but you have these certain fighters that they're able to overcome that. GSP said he was training the whole time. He was, you know, improving his skills, all this different stuff, and he came out and he showed as much. He looked great. I mean, I know he didn't come to the press conference because he was bloody, had to go to the hospital, had suffered a big cut on his head, but still, besides that, I mean, what can you say? He did not, like I said, did not look like he missed a single beat in the octagon.
He's perhaps the most dominant welterweight fighter of all time. Do you think he can parlay those skills into the middleweight division and put together a run? Dana White says he has Robert Whittaker next. Mm-hmm. He's not the biggest middleweight in the world. This could be a very suitable fight for him.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Whittaker started in the UFC as a welterweight, so he is a guy that has fought at that weight class. He's not the biggest welterweight. I struggle to see how GSP would fare, you know, as well against like a Yoel Romero, those type of guys, a Luke Rockhold, like these absolutely hulking middleweights who could be fighting at 205 or have fought at 205 at one point. Michael Bisping fought his first 17 pro fights at light heavyweight, so maybe it's not such a big thing. And GSP said the entire time that size doesn't matter, it's the skills and the heart and all that kind of stuff, and he showed as much inside the octagon.
St Pierre's legacy has never been in doubt. If he had ultimately stepped away from the game 4 years ago and never come back, he would still be regarded as one of the greatest fighters of all time. Where do you place him now? I know it's kind of a difficult question to answer, but to pick a specific place, but he has to be top 3, top 5 all time.
Yeah, easily. I mean, it just depends on what your criteria for that is. If you're of the mind that, you know, anyone that's had an issue with drug testing throughout their career, he's easily number one. You know, who else is there really in contention? It's him or Demetrius Johnson. And right now, I think he's just accomplished more. The problem I have with Demetrius Johnson is he hasn't beaten, you know, the former champions, these people with long credentialed resumes in the UFC, and GSP's done that. Not only did he beat 3 generations of welterweights during his reign, he comes out and he beats Michael Bisping at a new weight class, wins a second title. So yeah, for him, I think right now, and this is not me being a, you know, biased Canadian homer for George St Pierre, I do think he is number one.
And what now for Michael Bisping? Middleweight champion for quite a long time, a year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. He loses his belt. He's 38 years old. Where does he go?
I mean, I think he basically said as much. He doesn't want to go out on a loss like this. You know, he got choked out cold. First time we've really seen him lose in that kind of fashion. And I think for him, he's just probably going to fight on that fight card in London in March against, I don't know, it could be anyone. You could do the Luke Rockhold trilogy. You could finally have this Yoel Romero grudge match kind of squash. Or you could do someone, I mean, I think people would pick against him for most of that fight. So you could do something that's more favorable and more advantageous matchup to him. So he could go out on a high in London. But I think, you know, he seems to think that he's going to be fighting on that card. He said he's not too bad except for kind of, you know, some surface damage. So I think he does headline that card in London in March and then rides off into the sunset, does his TV things, whatever else he's got going on.
And on a standard UFC card, that fight was all we'd be discussing. That's all there is going to it. But this one had not just one other fight, but 2 other incredibly good title fights. We'll touch on both of those in a moment. Actually, we'll go to one of them now. Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. That was a fight that had so much rivalry, a big feud coming into it. A lot of people were picking Cody going into this, the undefeated fighter, the undefeated champion. He was super ultra confident, but ultimately got undone in the second round by Dillashaw.
Yeah, I mean, I got all 3 of these title fights wrong, so what do I know, I guess? But yeah, he went in there and he, TJ Dillashaw, he feels like he never lost the championship, and I agree. I scored that fight for him against Dominic Cruz, and then he goes out there, he beats Rafael Sunsao. He's fighting the top guys, the guys that are on streaks, and then he goes in there and, Cody Garbrandt, everyone's talking about him as the next superstar, has all this potential, that performance he put on against Dominic Cruz, but he went out there, he survived a bit of a rough first round, and then comes out and really just gets his stuff going, and is able to put Garbrandt away. It was just a really gutsy, stellar performance by TJ Dillashaw, and for me, he's really creating an argument. He said at the press conference, his 2 losses he's had are split decisions to a Sunsao, one of which he avenged, and then the one to Dominic Cruz. He could easily be on a 13-fight winning streak right now, and we'd be talking about him in the lights of Demetrius Johnson and George St Pierre. So yeah, TJ Dillashaw could be the best bantamweight we've ever seen, and he went out there, reclaimed the title, and did it in a very dramatic fashion, ending this rivalry for now.
And Dillashaw also said post-fight that he feels that Garbrandt was overly invested, a little too emotional going into the contest. Now, of course, the flip side of that coin is if Cody Garbrandt had won, we wouldn't even be talking about this. It would be a moot point. But do you think does that hold weight? Do you think Cody Garbrandt was a little too invested in this fight, and Dillashaw was able to maintain his discipline, maintain his composure, and that ultimately helped him through a tricky first round and then to get it done in the second?
Yeah, I think Dillashaw's level-headedness was more of an advantage than Cody's emotion being a disadvantage. I think Cody's the type of fighter that feeds off that, and it does ultimately make him better. I mean, it's not like he got wiped out in this fight. He got caught with a good shot, went down, and that was that. His arm was kind of pinned under him. He wasn't able to defend himself once he went down. So for him, I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that it's not too much to his detriment. It was just, not his night tonight.
Exactly. And with the third title fight, if we were talking this time yesterday and I had said to you that Rose Namajunas will knock out Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the first round, you probably would have questioned my media credentials coming in here. But that's ultimately what happened, and it was one of the more spectacular UFC title fights I think we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of challengers going in and fighting a dominant champion and taking the belt from him, there's not too many others like this. I mean, obviously you think of like Chris Weidman against Anderson Silva, stuff like that, but for Rose Namajunas in this fashion, her winning this fight by knockout was plus 2,500 on the betting odds. Wow. That's absolutely insane. She went and did it in about 3 minutes. Like, she hurt Joanna early, Joanna survived it, and then she put her away. It was just absolutely remarkable stuff from Rose Namajunas, and she seemed like, I think we were all questioning, where her mind was going into this one. Just, the blank stares we saw through the whole week, just the way she was kind of conducting herself. But she went in there and proved that none of that stuff matters, and it was able to put Joanna away. And yeah, that was just incredibly remarkable stuff from Rose Namajunas.
I think that's quite possibly the most intriguing, the best fight that's ever taken place in that division, which is still relatively new. Let's be honest. But do you think, with that in mind, that the only fight next for Rose is the Jędrzejczyk rematch?
Yeah, I think you have to do that. Not only because the division is, in terms of people, we've seen, the Jessica Andrades, the Claudia Gadelha's fight for the title somewhat recently, and I just think what Joanna's done in this title reign puts her on the level that she deserves that immediate rematch. We've seen, when GSP lost to Matt Serra, or these other champions, Anderson Silva to Chris Weidman, that they get this immediate rematch. And I think she's put in the work, unless she decides that she wants to go up to 125 and really end this and maybe go for the belt there. I see no reason why they wouldn't give her that immediate shot again.
We could talk here for literally an hour if we wanted to, but we'll just touch on a few extra fights on the card briefly. So Johnny Hendricks, Paulo Costa, how about that fight?
Yeah, I mean, that's another one I got wrong. Johnny Hendricks, he was not able to get his stuff going at all in that fight, and Costa just came out and steamrolled him. That guy has some serious potential in this weight class. I mean, he almost reminds me of a young Vitor Belfort, not just because of his physique and the fact that he's got, that speed and that power and everything, but he says he's the next Brazilian legend, and with the skill set and everything that, he kind of rebranded himself. He came out and started speaking English rather well in his post-fight interview, changes the name, all this different stuff. He looks great in there, and yeah, that's a guy really that you want to watch in the future, for sure.
How about those? There was two pretty spectacular knockouts on the card as well. Ricardo Ramos and Ovin St. Preux knocking out Corey Anderson. First off, which one of those two caught your eye the most?
I mean, I'd have to say that it was Ovince St Pierre just because of the level of competition. I mean, Eamon Zahabi, yes, he's Firas Zahabi's brother. He came in undefeated, but it was only his second UFC fight. He got caught with a ridiculous elbow. That was just the stuff of that's going to live on the highlight reel. Wouldn't be surprised if that was on the Bubba O'Reilly intro for the UFC pay-per-views and stuff. But yeah, I think Ovince St Pierre. I mean, huge props to this guy. He fought 42 days ago in Japan, submits Yushin Okami in the main event with that crazy Von Preux choke or whatever we're calling it. Does that, and then 42 days later comes over and wins this fight on short notice with a unbelievable head kick. That was just vintage Mirko Krokop type stuff that he landed, and yeah, just so impressive for him. He's a guy that he's fallen short against some of the bigger names in the division, but he's someone that will always be willing to jump in a fight, and he'll always be right there, and he's not going to really get blown out. I mean, we saw him go 5 rounds with John Jones, so he's a guy that I think will be an existing contender for quite a while.
A lot of Irish interest was in Joe Duffy. Came up short, was knocked out with a heartbeat remaining in the second round against James Vick, who's now 8-1 in the UFC. I remember back in the day watching the sport 10 years ago, an 8-1 record would guarantee you a title shot, let alone, and this guy's just looking for someone in the top 10 now at this point. Has James Vick forced the UFC's hand? Does he get a Justin Poirier next? Does he get the winner of Poirier and Pettis? Does he get someone or the winner of, I don't know, Alvarez and Gaethje? Yeah,
I mean, any of those guys you could do. I saw him kind of going back and forth with Kevin Lee. I think that would be a great fight that they could do. Pretty much anyone, but yeah, he definitely has forced the UFC's hand. And I think that Sean Shelby, he's the matchmaker for that division. I think he does a great job, but it would be a disservice to James Vick and kind of a slight criticism worthy of taking out Sean Shelby if he doesn't get him that top 15, top 10 opponent. James Vick definitely deserves it. I do think that fight was stopped a little bit early. I thought Joe Duffy was ready to keep going, but regardless, that's how it ended up. And James Vick, a new face in the lightweight division, which just has new faces popping up pretty much every single event.
Yeah, a new face with 9 fights, though. It talks about the depth of that particular weight division. Yeah. Now, we'll close it off here, but was there anything else that caught your eye throughout the course of the card?
I mean, I think we pretty much touched on it all. Stephen Thompson, of course, he rebounds from that 2 failed title bids against Tyron Woodley. That's really the type of performance he needed. He wasn't able to put Jorge Masvidal away. One of the few fights which actually, did go to the judges on this night, but still just a strong performance against him. No one's put Jorge Masvidal away in the UFC, so you can't really knock Stephen Thompson for not doing it either. That's a win he needed to just kind of get back in the conversation there. I don't think he's getting another title shot as long as Tyron Woodley's still the champion, but he needs to keep his name relevant in case, a short notice opportunity comes up, any of these things. So yeah, just a really important win for Stephen Thompson there.
I'll just throw this one at you. Stephen Thompson, Darren Till, UFC in London in March. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome to me, and I know Darren Till's already pushing for that if you follow him on social media. So, and I know Stephen Thompson addressed it earlier in the week and had some really nice things to say about Darren Till. So, yeah, arguably the 2 best strikers in the welterweight division. Let's make it happen. That sounds awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. We're finished here. UFC 217 is a wrap. Thank you for following all our coverage on TheMacLife.com all week long, and we'll see you again next time.